And the web address is referenced in the report, but I'll read it to you just in case. It's www.cnjg.org/facing-our-future, all one word. If you have any follow-up questions after the teleconference has ended, you can reach me at 609-240-6886 or Matt Riley at 609-712-6396. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Nina Stack, the president of Council of New Jersey Grantmakers, and she'll kind of open the formal remarks here.
Okay. Thank you very much, Becky. And I think someone else just joined us.
Lee from NJ Spotlight.
Thank you, Lee. So thank you all for joining us this afternoon. This morning we released the report that has been months in the making, Facing Our Future. Our goal with this is to really engage everyone, the residents of New Jersey, the citizens, community groups, business sector, and government in a serious, thoughtful, public discussion about the crisis that the state is facing fiscally. The Council has pursued this. Foundations, as you may be aware, are naturally inclined and do a very good job of taking the long view of things. They are also very good at convening and bringing people together. We felt that the Council could provide the role of presenting a safe, nonpartisan space for discussion and research. And so we brought together a group of people who care deeply about New Jersey and about the impact of the fiscal challenges that we have ahead of us. This effort has included former state treasurers, including Feather O'Connor Houston and Sam Crane, who are here with us now, I'm very pleased to say, a former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, former Attorneys General, former Commissioners for the Department of Environmental Protection, former staff of the Governor's Office, the Treasury, the legislative staff leaders, as well as representatives beyond government, from academe, from the foundation community, from the business sector. They all brought their knowledge and experiences and perspectives to the table. We also engaged two highly respected independent analysts to help us with this, Ray Caprio and a terrific team from the Rutgers Center for Executive Leadership in Government, and Rich Keevy, the former director of the Office of Management and Budget, who served under two governors. They took an objective look at publicly available information and used it as the basis for projections looking 5 years out at local, county, state, and school district levels. And I think with that, I will turn it over now to Sam and to Feather to talk about the specific findings and our goals. And I'm going to ask Sam if he would start by talking about why this group came together.
This group of 18 came together because first and foremost, we're all citizens of New Jersey. And second, as Nina has pointed out, all of us have had a unique experience of working in state and local government over a number of different administrations and, bring some expertise to the table. And we thought that it was time to, looking ahead, we were concerned about the future of the state long term. And we wanted to engage not only ourselves but our fellow citizens in a discussion of what the problem was and, begin a debate and public discussion on what we might do about it. This report that we released today has months of analysis of the public sector, and I'm going to define public sector as state government, county, municipal, and school districts, looking at them both as individual sectors and the interrelatedness between them. I think there's some key findings that you'll find in the executive summary, but let me just touch on a few of them. First of all, the gap between recurring revenue and our level of expenditure continues to grow over the next 5 years. That this is a long-term systemic problem and not a one-year budget crisis. In addition to those budget gaps, we have a $94 billion unfunded liability in the state pension funds and $27 billion at municipal and county levels. Third, that there's an interconnectedness between these public sector governmental agencies, and that if you solve one area's problem, say the state budget, it means that you're likely causing problems at other levels. So therefore, we have a public sector governmental problem, including all the entities I've been listed before. Along the way, we've learned some important things. Schools comprise, spending on schools, 40%, and they're paid for by levies at all levels of government. And that property taxes, not surprising for New Jersey and pretty well documented fact, is about 40% of all public sector revenue. Over the next 5 years, it is likely that we cannot achieve balanced budgets at all levels, as required by the Constitution and law, without significant service and programmatic reductions. And that it's clear, although you could infer from this report, that we're going to have to make some systemic changes in government and how we offer governmental services. What's interesting, and I think you'll find it in the report, and I direct your attention to it, is that many of our governmental structures and practices were born in the 19th century and are really probably not adequate to meet both the fiscal challenge we have over the next foreseeable future, but also to compete in the 21st century. There's one other part of the report that I want to stress. We took some time to have a section of the report that talks about how we raise and spend money in New Jersey at all levels, because we believe that helps form an informational base as a starting point for a discussion. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my friend and colleague, Feather O'Connor.
Thanks, Sam. Sam touched on the reason that we were so interested in doing this, and I just want to reinforce a couple of things about that. The breadth and depth and duration of the problems the state faces is unprecedented, and I think we all, from the perspective of having been in state government at various times, realized how easy it is in one case to look at it on an annual basis, and in the second to see it only from the perspective of the level of government at which we are sitting, whether it be city, county, school district, or state. And as Sam said, it all connects. It all moves back and forth. The problem just gets pushed around if we don't look at it globally. And I think the second important thing is that the duration and the depth of this, as the report points out, means that if we try to solve this 1 year at a time, we end up, the logic of the report suggests that we end up 5 years from now with a reduction, a contraction, a hollowing out, a degradation, whatever word you want to use, of services, potentially at all levels of government, of a minimum of 20%. And if you know right now that 5 years from now it is probable that that's what the future looks like, both citizens and public officials, we think, are in maybe of a different mind in terms of thinking about the kinds of changes that may be necessary, because they want to protect the quality of services. They want to protect what they care the most about. And so that's why the report is designed to be a starting point. It's designed to let citizens as well as active public officials become part of that conversation, because there's anything that anyone says is a solution could be, but it is not going to be the only solution.
Okay, so with that, I would open this up for questions.
Okay. This is Jared Renshaw with the Star Ledger. Quick question is, the defining this as the public sector and kind of looking at the state and local budgets in total, not as kind of separate parts, what do you think? What advantage does that give you as when you're doing an analysis? Whereas, for instance, there was a mention about income taxes, how the state relies on it, but when you include all the dollars in the public sector, it's a small fraction. By doing that, what advantage do you get, and what do you think people should take from it?
I think the people should take from it that they understand now how we raise money and spend money in New Jersey. We have a tendency to think about it as we're going to worry about the municipal budget today, the state budget tomorrow, and the school district budget next week. And as Feather has said, since they are all intertwined, we wanted to make the point that we have to look at them as a whole. So the point is to show where the major revenue sources are as well as the major spending. And I think that chart, helps answer that and is an educational tool as a basis for how we raise and spend money. Mm-hmm. So that was the reason for including in the report. As I said, I think earlier, we think it's important that there's an information base upon which to start the discussion.
What kind of solutions would flow from looking at those types of? I mean, it seems like consolidation would be the most obvious choice, would seem to me, in terms of or some kind of acknowledging this interconnectedness and kind of creating solutions. Do you have any specific solutions when you look at these the type of the way they raise money and how it's spent and how that could be more efficient?
Well, I think throwing out proposals at this point polarizes the conversation. It needs a lot more understanding of just how complicated it is. So we consciously did not do that. I think almost any solution will have advocates and detractors, but I think we need to start with understanding that almost any solution is going to be partial in its impact on the size of the problem that we have.
Okay. This is Sal Rizzo from the Star Ledger. I'm wondering, this seems like a pretty big undertaking on your part. Who is funding you guys?
Sure. We've received funding from the William Penn Foundation and from a private donor, and further work is going to be is expected to be underwritten by the Geraldine R. Dodge Foundation, the Community Foundation of New Jersey, and we hope some others.
Who is the private donor?
The private donor is a retired businessman from New Jersey who many of you, particularly you in the Star Ledger, will know, used to run Marr Terminals, Brian Marr.
Brian Marr.
He's retired now.
Okay. And I had another question. This seems, and by the end of the report, you get the sense that, this needs to be a transformational change, a systemic change, as you guys describe it. I'm wondering if you guys are preparing any lobbying efforts. This is something that will probably require a lot of politicians to get on board as far as, I think there's talk in here of maybe revising some constitutional or statutory requirements. So is there any lobbying being planned at this point?
Well, just as a matter of point of order, foundations don't lobby. We can engage in educational support to nonprofit organizations and things like that. What we do plan to do is to engage in some active outreach, try to drill down a bit to understand what the kinds of fiscal constraints we're talking about are really going to mean at various levels of government. We, not just Sam and me, but all of the participants have already and will be making themselves available to editorial boards, to legislators who want to learn or understand more. But we won't be proposing legislation or advocating or lobbying for specific legislation. I
see. And are there any legislators with whom you've already talked to or who have already expressed an interest?
We briefed and spoke with the legislative leadership. They didn't have any input into the report, but we wanted to let them know that it was coming. Oh yes, I'm sorry, I'm being reminded also, and the governor's office.
Did the governor's office have any response?
They were looking forward to seeing the report. It was before the report was done.
Oh, I see.
This is Jared. I'm sorry, real quick. This is Jared again. When you look at the finances in the economy as well, how much do you think this bleak outlook is a function of the current state of the economy, and how much do you think of it as kind of structurally a structural problem?
I don't think there's any doubt that a portion of it is related to a deep and serious recession. For instance, as we point out in the report, it looks as if it'll take us till 2014 to collect the revenue at the state level that we collected in 2008. That is a serious and deep recession, one I think Feather and I probably couldn't even fathom working through.
Do you know what kind of growth rate that assumes?
That assumes a 5% growth rate, which I will tell you is aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
What we've tried to do is be very, very, very cautious here. We've even cited, and if you go on the website, you will be able to see all the assumptions, all the background material.
Mm-hmm.
It's fully transparent for anybody who wants to see it.
Mm-hmm.
When you're trying to, so we have that. We've had the pension, we have this unfunded liability out there as well. I'm not sure I can assign a percentage to this and that.
Mm-hmm.
It is so deep and systemic. It has probably been coming for a while before the recession. The recession maybe has contributed and made it worse. But if we have growth by the end of the 5-year period, and if we don't do anything, we're right back where we were. We haven't solved it. And I think what Feather has talked about is that there is no one solution. There are no easy solutions or silver bullets, that we're at the point, as the report says, to be able to start to look at everything kind of on the table. And so I think the recession contributed to that and obviously has raised this issue in the public's mind. And I think this report will help educate and hopefully inform a debate.
Mm-hmm. What do you think the tone of this report, if say you conducted this undertaking in 2006, do you think it would have the same, I know it wouldn't have the same tone exactly, but do you think you could still come to the same conclusions even at the height of this?
If you could have told me in 2006 that the housing market in the United States was going to completely collapse, first of all, I would have gotten in the market real quick.
Sure.
But the other part of it is that it might not be the same depth, but I think as we looked out over time, that some of the problems were already there in the base, in the way in which we've, Medicaid costs, a whole series of things that were built-in costs that were starting to rise far faster than even revenues in fairly good economic times. So we would have had, maybe the numbers would be different, the conclusion might have been the same.
Sure. Okay.
It might have been one alarm fire instead of five.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. One or two alarms.
Sure. All right.
This is Sal from the Star Ledger. I have a question about, it seems like this will be a very big change if it were to happen as you guys are proposing. Are there any models, any countries, any states, any cities? I know that kind of falls into the next steps that you were talking about, but is there a place that you've been looking at already to kind of reach these first conclusions?
I'm not sure exactly what you're reading into the report in terms of changes. And I think the point of this report is that
well, there is a mention of cutting at least 20% of government services.
Well, that's the order of magnitude of compression that is implied by the 5-year look that we're talking about. I think there are people who what I'm trying to get at is
is there any precedent for this kind of, large-scale, system-wide reduction in, expenses or increasing, in revenue?
Yeah, I think one of the things you could do is look across the United States, and we are not alone. There are major states such as California, and obviously Governor Cuomo just delivered a very stern budget message in New York. I'm assuming that our governor will do the same this month, and I'm sure that we will hear governors reporting across the country, from Illinois to Nevada to Arizona to New Jersey, that, things are tough. So we're not in this alone. But the solution is uniquely New Jersey, because we are a state with probably very different traditions and governmental practices than our friends in Nevada or Arizona or California. And so, although we face similar challenges, that it is up to us to fashion the kind of solutions long term, that this report starts the discussion about that are uniquely our state.
Hi, this is Lee from NJ Spotlight. You said there was going to be an active outreach after this report. How do you make sure something like this doesn't just die, Is there going to be a commission or, community hearings or anything like that?
If we get good press coverage, more people understand the magnitude of the problem, more citizens understand that what's happening at the state level is going to have direct implication for them trying to balance their school district budget, their county budget, their city budget. There are a lot of community organizations that we believe will be very, very interested in this, because they care deeply about what's happening in their community and are going to be affected by what happens next. So the 5-alarm fire may be a little over the top, but I do think part of this is having people understand it. So when they hear how the problem is being solved, they ask questions about, is this the best way? Are there other approaches? The breadth of what this contraction in services as a result of simply the requirement to balance the budget will be pervasive across virtually every community in New Jersey. This is not something that's going to be isolated in certain kinds of towns or certain parts of the state. It's going to be very noticeable to everyone.
Hi, Bob Jordan from the Asbury Park Press. Which state might have the model at all levels of government on what might be looked at and copied or borrowed from?
I don't think they're, and I don't believe that we've seen up till this particular recession this sort of the magnitude of revenue contraction combined with some of the pushes, say, on Medicaid and things like that, combined, that are forcing the kinds of decisions that states are having to make up in this next couple of years. New Jersey's situation is compounded by the magnitude of pension underfunding, but I think this the structural deficit problem that many states are facing is just beyond in magnitude what we've all seen. How each state reacts to it, whether they rethink their service structure or whether they just keep tightening without rethinking what services they're providing and how they're providing, and all of those kinds of issues. I think the next year or two is going to tell, because until citizens see the effects and understand that it can't be changed by just pushing it off to another level of government, and can't be blamed on another level of government, but it's just simply the state we're all in. you don't know what the tolerance for change might even be. So I think there's several states that are in this situation right now, but none that have sort of pioneered a rethink in the way that I think New Jersey is going to have to do.
Okay, any other questions?
None for me.
Okay, so, please know that if you have any follow-up questions, call me, call Matt, and we are happy to connect you with Sam, Feather, Nina, others, if you need any more help. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, bye.
Thank you. Please stand by.